Jesus's first miracle, turning water into wine. We've all heard the story, right? But here's the thing that's always a little strange. The Bible calls this quiet, almost secret event the very first time Jesus revealed his glory. Now, that's a huge claim for what looks like a simple catering fix. So in this explainer, we're going to uncork this story and figure out what that glory was really all about.
Okay, so picture the scene. You're at a wedding in Cana, and they run out of wine. In that culture, that's not just an inconvenience, it's a massive social disaster. Jesus' mother points it out. He tells the servants to fill 6 big stone jars with water, and boom, that water becomes the best wine of the entire party. It seems simple enough, but the real power of this story isn't in what happened, it's in why it happened.
And this is the central puzzle we're tackling today. The text flat out says this is the moment Jesus revealed his glory. But what glory? There were no cheering crowds, he didn't give a big sermon, and the hosts didn't even know where the wine came from. So what was this sign really pointing to?
And this is what makes it so fascinating, right? Unlike all these huge public miracles later on, this one is practically a secret. It's a quiet solution to an embarrassing problem, and yet the author flags it as the beginning of signs. To really get it, we have to stop looking at it with our modern eyes and try to see it through the eyes of the people who were actually there. The key, according to our source material, is to step into the ancient cosmic worldview of the Hebrew Bible. And trust me, this was a reality that operated on a completely different set of rules than the one we're used to. So what does that actually mean? Well, for the ancients, heaven and earth weren't in 2 separate, sealed-off boxes. They saw them as overlapping, interpenetrating domains. The divine realm could, and often did, break right into the human one. So glory wasn't just some abstract thing up there. It was something that could show up right here, right now. This slide just lays it out perfectly. Over on the left, you've got our modern view, sealed realms, a distant God. We tend to define God with abstract ideas, like omnipotence. But look at the right. That's the ancient view. Glory dwells among humanity. And here's the kicker. That last point, identity is an abstract label. Identity is function. This is absolutely crucial, so let's let it sink in. You are what you do. Your identity was revealed by your actions. And here's the thing, certain functions, certain jobs were reserved for Yahweh alone. So to perform one of those functions wasn't just acting for God, it was a claim to be acting as God. So what specific function is Jesus performing here? Well, he's providing wine at a feast. And that's not just some random act of kindness. That is an action that directly plugs into a very specific role of Yahweh in the Old Testament, the role of the cosmic host. Let's just take a look at Psalm 104. It's this incredible poem that describes God as the one who sets up the whole cosmic order, and as a result, he provides these very specific gifts. And once you know it, right there in the middle is wine that gladdens the heart of man. This isn't just a throwaway line. It's a core part of the job description for being God. So the psalm paints this picture of Yahweh as the great divine host. He doesn't just, create the world and then step back. No, he actively sustains it and provides for it. So wine in this world isn't just a drink. It's a symbol of God's generous and joyful rule over his creation. And this slide gets to the heart of how radical this miracle really was. Notice what Jesus doesn't do. He doesn't pray for wine like a prophet might. He doesn't ask God for help. He just commands, and creation obeys. He's not the middleman here. He is acting as the source of that cosmic abundance. In that world, this was a jaw-dropping claim of identity. Okay, let's move on to the next major clue in this story, because it just keeps building. Those 6 stone jars, they're not just props in the background. They carry some serious symbolic weight, but maybe not in the way you've heard before. Now, a really common interpretation is that these jars, which were used for Jewish purification rites, symbolize an old, flawed, and inadequate system that Jesus is here to replace. A simple out with the old, in with the new kind of thing. But our source material here suggests something way deeper. What if these purification systems weren't seen as bad? What if they were seen as a necessary God-given tool for what you could call cosmic containment? Their job was to manage the disorder and impurity of a broken world that was still waiting for its real restoration. The system wasn't flawed, it was just temporary. And this is the key takeaway, just like the quote says. Jesus isn't reforming an old system, he is replacing it entirely. The water meant for purification becomes wine meant for celebration. The whole era of just trying to manage the brokenness is over. The era of total transformation has just begun. And this brings us to the final reveal, where all of these pieces, the ancient worldview, the divine role of host, the meaning of the jars, they all click together to show us what that glory really was at that little wedding in Cana. And finally, just think about the sheer amount of wine. 6 jars, each holding maybe 20 to 30 gallons. We're talking somewhere around 150 gallons of wine. That's insane. That's hundreds and hundreds of bottles of the best wine. This isn't just topping off the supply. This is an extravagant, over-the-top, almost ridiculous display of abundance. And that extravagance was the signal. For anyone listening who was steeped in the scriptures, that kind of lavish, overflowing abundance was a well-known sign that the promised new creation was finally dawning. The time of scarcity was over, and the floodgates of divine generosity were opening up. So what was the glory revealed at Cana? Let's break it down. Who was he? He was acting as Yahweh, the cosmic host. What did he do? He signaled the arrival of the new creation. When did he do it? He was kicking off the great, cosmic feast at the end of time. And why? To reveal his true divine identity as the one who comes to make all things new. And when you see it this way, it totally reframes the whole idea of redemption. It's not just some kind of legal transaction about forgiving sins. It's about restoring the entire cosmos. It's a return to celebration, to abundance, and to the kind of joy you find at a feast. So we'll end with this thought. What if this very first sign was meant to completely change our picture of what salvation is all about? What if it's less like a courtroom and a lot more like a wedding reception? What if redemption isn't just about forgiveness, but an invitation to a feast that has already begun?